And Senator Ball, thank you very much for joining us this evening. It is good to see you again.
Good to be here, Liz. Thank you.
So there was a 4-hour and change closed-door conference earlier of yourself and your colleagues in the Senate Republican Conference. I assume that it was the gun control discussion that took place behind those doors. Can you tell us anything about what happened there?
Well, I don't want to get myself in trouble, and some of these things are above my pay grade. But I'll just say this. I mean, this is a big push by this governor, no doubt. It's extremely important that the details of this piece of legislation, whether we vote yes or no, that they go through a proper airing. I want to make sure that these details see the light of day. And we have certainly begun to flesh them out, but the public still hasn't gotten the opportunity to review these in depth in any way. And I know there's a big push by the governor to get this done immediately, and he has a national time frame where he's trying to beat Joe Biden to the punch. But I would like to have a public airing of some of these details, so when the legislation does hit the floor, that legislators know what they're voting on.
Yeah, I mean, there's a possibility that the governor would issue what we call a message of necessity that allows him to circumvent the aging process. Usually it takes 3 days for a bill to age, so lawmakers and members of the public can have an opportunity to read it, review it. It also gives opponents an opportunity to organize against it. If the governor does go ahead and do that, and the vote takes place in the middle of the night or even in the early morning hours, what kind of message does that send? What will you do?
Liz, I got to tell you, as a member who I still haven't had the opportunity to read this bill, and like I said, we're talking about a comprehensive piece of legislation that it looks like it's going to be all packaged together. There are a lot of good things that are being presented in this bill. I personally would like to see them come to the floor individually, not because I have an axe to grind, I want one to fail and the other not to, but I think the legislators should have the opportunity to address each individually on its own merit. And I personally wish that the governor would give the public the time to see the details in this bill, because something this important, on the Second Amendment issue, I've been around guns my entire life. I grew up in a family in the country, a very strong appreciation with a hunting tradition and sportsman tradition. And I got to tell you that there's confusion, I think, even amongst members, that a few hours and a few days of having an honest conversation and talking to the grassroots organizations out there, both those that support and against, it wouldn't be a bad thing. Every single time that there's a complicated, comprehensive bill, once it's rushed, a lot of times legislators will vote on it, and a few days later they'll find out, oh, you know what? If I had known X, maybe I would have done X. So I am personally worried about that, but I know the governor is pushing like hell to get it done, hell or high water.
Yeah, and then some of the sticking points are really sort of fascinating. I mean, at least from what we heard, for example, how much schools would be reimbursed for beefing up their security and where that money might come from at a time when the state, we hear from the governor, is facing at least $1 billion budget deficit. We haven't seen his budget proposal. Of course, it's coming next week. But that's sort of a weird place to be stuck, in my mind. I would think that you would be stuck on some other details of the assault weapons ban, for example, or the magazines.
Liz, I really don't think that that's a major point. I don't feel that on the school funding side that's a major point of contention, at least from what I can see. I do believe that the specifics in this renewed assault weapons ban, and there already is an assault weapons ban, so what we're talking about is taking pieces of firearms that are currently legal right now, and people in the state of New York that have firearms that are legal right now, and making those firearms illegal.
Right.
And then if those individuals do not turn over those firearms, those would be criminals. So those really are the points of contention I think that most members, and certainly myself, and I speak for myself, are intimately concerned with. As far as on the school funding side, you can offer a school 10%, 20%, 50%. 50% may be a good number, but if a school's already in deficit, I don't see how that gets us to where we need to go.
I wonder, since this appears to be coming all as one package, it does put people like yourself and some of the more conservative members of the Senate Republican and the Assembly Republican Conference, or maybe even a few upstate Democrats as well, in a difficult position. I mean, how will you vote if you like the increased penalties and the expansion of Kendra's law, for example, example, but you don't like the gun control pieces, for example, closing the loophole in the assault weapons ban?
What our leadership, I think on both sides, are asking certain members to do is to walk into a buzzsaw. And I can tell you that just philosophically, you know my position. I'm a very strong advocate of the Second Amendment. I believe that the things that I've seen in this package, there are a lot of good things. I can see members, voting for this and in good conscience. I can tell you that any expansion of the assault weapons ban that takes weapons that are currently legal in the arms of people that are obeying the law and turning them into criminals, I have a real problem with that, which means that I would have to vote against a piece of legislation that maybe 17 out of the 19 things I agree with. That's not a position that most legislators enjoy being in, and I wish that this governor worked with our leadership and we work with the leadership in the Assembly to actually break this bill out, give it a few days, let the sunlight, let the public on both sides see it. Let's make the changes that are necessary, according to the input. I think most people are going to be happy with the overall package, but break it out and allow legislators vote the way they wish and according, to the best interest of their constituency, but not as one big nasty, but in a more broken out approach. I think that makes sense from a good government perspective, and it makes sense from allowing legislators to vote their conscience.
What kind of update can you give us? The last time we had you here, we were talking about the issue of the Journal News and its publication of handgun owner permits in two particular counties, Rockland and Westchester. Over the weekend, there was a burglary, and my understanding from a statement that you put out in subsequent news reports was that it was directly connected to information that was publicized, that these people were actually seeking the gun safe in someone's home. Can you give us an update on that?
The only thing I'll say to that, Liz, is that from the very beginning, I said if a connection, can be made, we're in contact with the family, and we believe that they think that there is a connection. But people shouldn't be surprised. Our office, forget not only this instance, which is important. We believe that we'll see more instances like this, as criminals have testified to. We have corrections officers that have come to us that have told us that the inmates are pointing to this map and saying, we know where your families are. We have many more victims of domestic violence that have come forward even in the previous week that say that their stalkers and their abusers are back. And criminals have testified to the fact that they would use this interactive map. So I believe that we're going to get privacy protections in the comprehensive bill. It looks like there's traction moving in that direction. And it once again lends to why I wish that this bill wasn't a big nasty and we could vote on it individual point by individual point.
Right, because then again, you would be forced to vote no on something that you actually proposed yourself.
Imagine that. Only in Albany.
Well, it certainly would not be the first time. So my understanding is that right now we're waiting for word from the Senate Rules Committee. It could be several hours until we get an update. Hopefully we will be able to have some more news to report very soon, but I want to thank you very much, Senator Ball, for being with us this evening from the Capitol. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Liz. Have a great night.
You too.